Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into your sandals, dusty, cracked, and definitely not arch-supportive, to live the entire life of a Roman postman. You wake up before dawn on the Appian Way, that famous stretch of road lined with tombs, olive groves, and the occasional goat who looks like it's judging your life choices. The air smells faintly of wet dust and mule hair, and the first light of the Mediterranean sun hasn't yet cleared the mist hanging over the road. You pull your cloak tighter, wondering how anyone can deliver a message across an empire before breakfast. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this job more than a decade, but don't worry, no one else does either. So parent, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and the time where you're listening. I always love seeing where my sleepy historians are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first sound you hear is the creak of the stable door, as your colleague, well, technically your boss, though he's mostly there to complain, calls out that the Emperor's post must ride by sunrise. You rub your eyes and glance at the leather satchel that will define your day. Inside are scrolls, folded tablets, and sealed packets marked with wax impressions, each representing some senator's ego, a military order, or a trade report no one will read but everyone insists on sending. The Romans called this system the Cursus Publicus, the public way. Augustus himself, clever man that he was, designed it to carry official messages across the empire faster than gossip could travel through the forum. The network was enormous, roughly 80,000 kilometres of maintained roads stretching from Britannia's damp outpost to the sands of Syria. Historians still argue whether couriers like you were technically government employees or freelance contractors. Probably a little of both, depending on who you bribed last week. You hitch the mule to the small cart, humming a tune that's been passed down from courier to courier, something about the gods favouring those who deliver on time. The wheel squeaks. Everything in your life squeaks. You take a sip of watered wine. Because Romans hadn't yet invented coffee. And mutter a sleepy prayer to Mercury, patron of travellers and messengers. Mercury, in myth, wore winged sandals. You, sadly, wear whatever sandals the last courier didn't lose to a pothole. The post station around you buzzes with quiet chaos. The stable boy tries to feed an uncooperative horse. A clerk scratches notes into a wax tablet, and a guard leans on his spear pretending not to nap. The smell of hay mixes with smoke from the kitchen, where some charitable soul is burning bread again. You think about the road ahead, 50 miles to the next mutatio, or relay station, where you'll change mounts and maybe catch a bowl of lentil stew. The Romans built these every 10 to 15 miles, so couriers like you could keep moving. Day and night, like human clock hands ticking across the map. Your path begins on the Via Appia, the queen of roads. It's straight as ambition, and nearly as old, paved with basalt stones that glisten with dew. Each footstep clicks softly, rhythmic and hypnotic. You've walked this route 100 times, yet every morning it feels new. The sky, pale gold, the countryside whispering through olive leaves, the faint scent of warm earth and donkey sweat mingling in the breeze. Along the roadside, tombs of wealthy Romans stand like silent spectators. Their marble faces stare down at you, names carved deep into stone. Some belong to generals, others to actors or merchants who wanted to be remembered forever by the very people trudging past them. You nod politely to one familiar statue. The man's expression suggests he disapproves of your muddy tunic. You disapprove of it too. But laundry is a luxury reserved for senators and their slaves. A mile out, you pass a small shrine to Mercury. The paint's faded, and someone's left an offering. A bit of bread, a coin, and a sprig of rosemary. You toss in a tiny piece of dried fig from your pouch, just in case the god's listening. Historians still debate how much faith couriers placed in divine protection versus good old-fashioned horse endurance. Either way, a little superstition doesn't hurt, especially when you're crossing Roman traffic. Your first message today carries the crimson seal of the Praetor Urbanus, destined for a military officer stationed near Capua. Another goes to a grain merchant in Tarentum. The final, most delicate one bears the imperial eagle. A communication so official, you're supposed to guard it as if your own soul were attached. You smile faintly. Your soul, you think, is already halfway to the next tavern. The morning sun warms the road as you pass farmers, hauling carts of figs and amphorae. A pair of children wave from a field, chanting "Posta Posta," a nickname for couriers that sounds suspiciously like pest. You wave back, trying not to run over their goose, which seems personally offended by your existence. Hours pass in a steady rhythm of hoofbeats and thoughts. You imagine how many lives intertwine through the messages you carry. Governors shifting legions, lovers exchanging poems, a physician writing home about a miraculous new ointment made from crocodile dung. You tried it once. It worked about as well as you'd expect. The empire runs not on glory, you realise, but on paperwork, and you are its humble artery. By midday, you stop beneath a cypress for a moment's rest. The air hums with cicadas, the sun painting gold flecks across your worn satchel. You eat a crust of bread that could double as masonry, and sip tepid water from a flask that smells faintly of vinegar. In the distance, another courier rides past, waving lazily. His cart carries sacks of papyrus rolls bound for the governor's archive. You nod in silent solidarity. The ancient equivalent of two delivery drivers passing at dawn, united by sore backs and the eternal promise of just one more stop. You climb back onto the road. The horizon shimmers, and Rome feels at once close and impossibly far. The empire stretches so wide that messages can take weeks, even months, to reach their destinations. And yet, the system works. Mostly. Historians still argue whether the Cursus Publicus could truly handle private letters, or if that was just the side hustle of enterprising couriers. You, naturally, see no problem slipping in a love note here and there. Everyone deserves express delivery once in a while. In a The day ends with the sound of bells, tiny bronze ones tied to a passing team of horses. The road grows quiet as the sun sets in a wash of apricot and dust. You pull the mule aside, pat its neck, and whisper that tomorrow will be easier. It never is. But under the fading Roman sky, with your cloak wrapped tight and your letters safe, you feel, just for a moment, like part of something vast and beautifully mundane. You're back on your feet before the horizon even thinks about turning pink. The station's thin oil lamp has long guttered out, and the world sits in that strange pre-dawn hush where every sound feels slightly amplified. Your sandals scraping gravel, the low whicker of a mule, the distant splash of a bucket at the well. You stretch your arms and look at the pile of sealed packets laid out on a rickety table, each one neatly labelled and waiting to be sorted. Sorting the Emperor's mail, you mutter under your breath, as if it's a glamorous career title. The Romans loved their order, at least on parchment. The Cursus Publicus ran like an elaborate machine of flesh, hoof, and ink. Your first task each morning is sorting the correspondence brought in overnight from riders arriving along connecting routes. You unroll scrolls tied with string, check the wax seals for imperial symbols, and sort them into destination baskets. North, south, coastal, inland. It's like running a post office. If every customer were a senator with anger issues, the scent of wax lingers on your fingers. You pick up a letter marked with the double seal of the Senate and People of Rome, SPQR in proud relief. The courier who brought it looks half dead from exhaustion, but his tunic's still neatly belted. You nod approvingly. Appearances matter when you're representing the state's bureaucracy. After all, image is everything, and nothing says efficient empire like a man who hasn't slept in 2 days yet still bows before handing over a letter. You sit down at the sorting bench, trying not to spill crumbs from your breakfast ration, a wedge of barley bread with a drizzle of olive oil. It's not much, but it's fuel enough for thinking. Rome's communication system was divided into two classes, the Cursus Velox, the fast track for urgent dispatches, usually military or political, and the Cursus Clavularis, the slower route for heavier loads like supply manifests or tax reports. Guess which one you're stuck with today. As you shuffle through the pile, you notice something odd. One scroll bears no seal at all. Just a smear of wax and a faint perfume that smells like myrrh. You raise an eyebrow. Someone's slipping personal letters into official deliveries again. It's technically illegal, but everyone does it. Scribes, soldiers, even magistrates' wives sending love notes to philosophers in Athens. Historians still argue whether the Cursus Publicus tolerated this out of practicality or sheer apathy. Either way, you tuck it discreetly under the stack. No harm in letting romance hitch a ride. Beside you, an assistant clerk scratches notes into a wax tablet. His stylus moves so fast it's practically smoking. Another day of glory for the Empire, he mutters, sarcasm as dry as the bread. You grin. If glory smells like horse sweat and old parchment, we're all heroes. He doesn't look up. The process of sorting the Emperor's mail is both meticulous and, surprisingly, chaotic. Each scroll must be logged into a tablet, sender, destination, carrier, date, and an official mark known as the signum stationarii. You run your thumb over the carved mark of your own station, a tiny cypress tree. Every courier route has one. It's like a brand, both a badge of honour and a way to blame the right person when things go wrong. At the end of the table sits a small chest, its lid fastened with bronze clasps. Inside go the high-priority dispatches, the ones bound for governors, generals, and imperial officials. They travel in pairs, one courier, one guard. You glance at the chest with mild envy. The pay's better, but so are the dangers. Stories circulate of couriers, ambushed by bandits or waylaid by rival messengers, hoping to peek at sealed orders. You once heard about a man who swallowed his letter to keep it safe. He didn't make it, but historians still debate whether that counts as dedication. The sun finally spills its pale light across the courtyard, illuminating the mosaic floor, tiny tiles forming the image of Mercury, with his winged cap and mischievous smile. Someone thought it motivational to install him here, like a divine supervisor. You give him a half-hearted salute. Morning, boss. The next task is checking for counterfeits. Official wax seals were made using engraved rings, unique to each sender. But counterfeiters existed even in Rome. Ambitious merchants, spies, or simply clever pranksters. You warm the wax slightly over the lamp's flame, watching for inconsistencies. Genuine seals melt clean. Forgeries bubble. One scroll fizzes slightly. And you sigh. Another fake. Probably someone trying to sneak grain price rumours into official channels. You set it aside for inspection, knowing full well it'll be ignored. You take a moment to stretch your legs, stepping outside into the crisp morning air. The road is already stirring, merchants loading carts, travellers arguing over directions, and the occasional tax collector scanning ledgers like a hawk. Beyond the gates, the Appian Way unrolls like a ribbon of promise and responsibility. Somewhere along that endless ribbon, another courier just like you is sorting, stamping, sealing, keeping the Empire breathing one scroll at a time. You wander back inside and resume sorting, humming softly. You catch sight of a note addressed to a poet named Marcellus in Neapolis. It's wrapped in the green silk, oddly fancy for mail. You peek at the docket. Approved by Senator Lucius Varro. You raise an eyebrow again. That senator's notorious for his obsession with verse and his habit of sending unsolicited poems about olives to anyone who'll read them. You smirk, imagining the poet's polite eye roll. Even in ancient Rome, junk mail existed. A gust of wind rustles the parchment stack. You steady it with your hand, thinking about how fragile this whole operation is. The Empire's strength depends not just on legions, but on the invisible network of words carried between them. A lost letter can mean a delayed order, a failed campaign. And somewhere in the middle of it all stands you, the overworked human hinge of history. By mid-morning, either sorting's done. Piles are stacked, tablets filled, and the air smells faintly of hot wax and accomplishment. You wrap the final bundle with twine, seal it with your station's insignia, and hand it off to the quartermaster. He checks the manifest, scratches something illegible into his own tablet, and grunts his approval. Before you leave, you glance back at the table, its clutter of scrolls, broken seals and crumbs. You imagine how this might look to someone centuries from now. Evidence of a vast, organised civilization. They'll marvel at how messages travelled without electricity, how humans managed to keep in touch across thousands of miles using only muscle, willpower, and stubborn efficiency. You smile a little proud. Then you sneeze from the dust and remember the bread still stuck in your teeth. So much for glory. You sling your satchel over your shoulder, the weight familiar and oddly comforting. Another day, another batch of imperial secrets, tax updates, and possibly love letters. You nod to the mosaic mercury once more, whispering, "Keep an eye on these, would you?" and step back into the waking hum of the Roman morning. You begin your morning ritual the same way every courier in the Empire does, with a brief argument against your own wardrobe. Roman postmen don't exactly have the glamour of the Praetorian Guard. No plumes, no polished armour, no statues in their honour. Just tunics, dust and that ever-present whiff of donkey. You tug on your short-wool tunic, rough, itchy, and somewhere between beige and the colour of disappointment, and secure it with a simple leather belt. Fashion, you remind yourself, is for senators. Function is for those who actually keep Rome running. Ah, the Cursus Publicus. May sound majestic, but you've never met a courier who didn't secretly envy a baker's apron. The postman's uniform, if you can call it that, was issued by region and climate. A short tunic for hot southern routes, a heavier cloak for alpine deliveries, and sandals so thin they might as well be wishes. You wrap strips of wool around your calves, a habit borrowed from soldiers, and tie the laces with hands, already sticky from wax. Historians still argue whether couriers had official insignia. Some say they bore bronze tags stamped with their station's emblem. Others think that was just bureaucratic wishful thinking. You're inclined to believe the latter, since your tag fell off months ago, and no one's noticed. A narrow meme. You glance at your reflection in a basin of water. The surface ripples, distorting your face into something older and tireder than you remember. The Romans didn't have mirrors everywhere, so reflections were rare moments of honesty. You run a hand through your hair, dusty, tangled, but mostly still there, and shrug. At least you don't have lice this week. Progress. There's one essential piece you never skip. Your pallium viatorium, the traveller's cloak. It's long enough to double as a blanket, thick enough to keep out rain if you squint and pretend, and coarse enough to exfoliate a rhino. You toss it over your shoulder like a toga's humbler cousin. The smell of lanolin clings to it, a sheep-scented badge of endurance. You imagine Mercury himself wearing something similar, if he'd been paid in leftover lentils. And then there are the sandals. Ah yes, the Roman calci, a marvel of minimalist engineering, supposedly designed for marching long distances. They consist of thin leather soles laced up the ankle, with generous ventilation for maximum exposure to pebbles. You slide your feet in and instantly feel that familiar jab of gravel through the sole. You wiggle your toes and sigh. Comfortable as ever. You mutter, "No coffee, no tea, just tepid water and a crust of barley bread to start your day." You imagine centuries from now, some lucky descendant sipping cappuccino before work, blissfully unaware of their Roman ancestors' caffeine-deprived suffering. Historians will call us resilient. You grumble. But really, we're just sleepy. You make your way to the supply bench, where the quartermaster, an elderly man with eyebrows so large they deserve their own postal code, is inspecting satchels. "You again," he says without looking up. "Still alive?" You nod. "Barely. But I intend to stay that way until payday." He snorts and tosses you a repaired strap. Try not to lose this one. We're short on replacements. You buckle it on, trying not to imagine how many couriers before you have sweated into this same leather. Your satchel, the soul of your job, hangs at your side. It's worn smooth from years of friction, patched in places with bits of fabric from old cloaks. You run your fingers over the embossed letters. C.B. for Cursus Publicus. Inside, compartments hold wax tablets, scrolls, seals, a spare stylus, and the occasional emergency snack. Today, it's half a dried fig and an almond you found under the bed yesterday. The smell of oil lamps fills the air as clerks shuffle past, their sandals slapping the floor in a rhythmic unison. Somewhere, a mule brays with existential despair. You step outside into the morning light, where the road already simmers with activity. A baker's boy balances a tray of loaves on his head, shouting prices. A cart creaks under the weight of amphorae marked for the port. You stretch your arms, feeling the stiffness melt away. The sun climbs, the world brightens, and the rhythm of the empire begins again, steady, relentless, slightly absurd. A fellow courier named Lucius joins you, his tunic marginally cleaner than yours. He grins, revealing a missing tooth. They say the governor's sending out new sandals next month, he says. Maybe with thicker soles. You laugh, a dry sound that could sandwood. Sure, and maybe the emperor himself will start delivering the mail. Lucius chuckles, adjusting his cloak. You joke, but rumour has it a legate's son tried courier work once, to build character. You raise an eyebrow. And he lasted 1 day, Lucius says. Apparently he didn't like the smell. Historians still argue whether couriers rode horses exclusively or alternated with mules. You, ever practical, know the truth. Horses for urgent letters, mules for those carrying your mood. You prefer the latter. Horses are fast but arrogant. Mules, at least, share your disdain for authority. Yours is named Fortuna Minor. Little Fortune. Because that's exactly what she brings you. Small blessings, like not biting you mid-ride. You lead her to the hitching post and pat her neck. Another glorious day, my friend, you whisper. She snorts in agreement, or possibly insult. You secure the satchel to the saddle and check the small bronze bell tied to her bridle. It jingles softly, a pleasant counterpoint to the clatter of hooves. That sound will become your constant companion, the heartbeat of travel, the pulse of distance shrinking beneath you. As you mount up, you glance back at the station. The clerk with the enormous eyebrows waves half-heartedly. Don't die, he calls. That's the plan, you shout back. A pair of geese flutter noisily into the air as you click your tongue and start forward. The first stretch of road gleams under the morning sun, the basalt stones still wet from last night's dew. You feel the familiar bounce in your spine with every uneven slab. Romans prided themselves on straight, solid roads, but no one ever claimed they were comfortable. You settle into the rhythm, creak, jingle, thud, and let your mind drift. You think about your uniform again. Simple, functional, anonymous. There's comfort in that. No one remembers a courier's name unless something goes wrong. You've delivered orders that moved armies, messages that decided marriages, and reports that toppled careers, but no statue will ever bear your likeness. You exist in the background of empire, half shadow, half motion. Yet, in a quiet way, it suits you. The road doesn't care who you are. The wind doesn't judge your tunic's cleanliness. The empire may forget your face, but every mile you cover keeps its heart beating. You smile faintly. Perhaps being invisible isn't so bad, as long as you keep moving. The sun climbs higher. Sweat beads on your brow. You adjust your cloak and think wistfully of shade. Or at least a breeze. A flock of sparrows darts overhead, scattering dust motes like glitter. Somewhere ahead, the road forks, one path toward Capua, the other toward the coastal relays. Your orders say Capua, but for a fleeting moment you imagine taking the wrong road on purpose. disappearing into some seaside town where no one asks for seals or scrolls. Then your mule stumbles slightly. Reality returns, and you sigh. Maybe next lifetime. As you ride, you hum the same old courier's song, half chant, half prayer. It's about a postman who outran a storm to deliver the emperor's birthday message, only to find the emperor had already left for vacation. You chuckle softly. Bureaucracy truly never changes. And as the wind lifts your cloak and the sunlight ripples across the ancient stones, you realise something quietly comforting. Even without coffee, you're awake, alive, and part of a story that stretches from the centre of Rome to the edges of the known world. The sandals may pinch, but the road always welcomes you back. The road calls before the roosters finish their first complaint. You nudge Fortuna Minor forward, her hooves striking a steady rhythm against the basalt. The Via Appia stretches ahead, long and stubbornly straight, an artery of stone feeding the empire's restless body. Today's route takes you through a patchwork of farms, relay stations, and enough potholes to make any engineer weep. Still, this is your world, a measured distance between one sealed order and the next. The Romans built their roads with the same pride modern cities reserve for skyscrapers. Layers of gravel, lime, and stone fitted so precisely that, in some places, you could drop a coin between the cracks and it would still be there in a century. The Cursus Publicus depended on these lines, each relay station, mutationes, spaced roughly 12 to 15 miles apart, each manned by stable hands, grooms, and the occasional scribe pretending to look busy. You've learned the rhythm of these stops like beats in a song. Arrive, exchange passwords, sign the manifest, swap animals, eat something vaguely edible, then vanish into the next horizon. The Empire's correspondence moves this way, through hundreds of couriers like you, breathing life into the paper bloodstream of Rome. As the day brightens, the air warms, and the countryside begins to chatter. Farmers shout at their oxen. Traders balance baskets of olives on wagons. And somewhere in the distance, a shepherd plays a tune that's part melody, part argument with the wind. You breathe deeply, catching the scent of thyme, manure, and distant sea salt. Not unpleasant, just Roman. The first relay comes into view, a cluster of low stone buildings marked by a red-painted post, bearing the imperial eagle. You pass under its shadow, nodding to the guard at the gate. He recognises you, most of them do, and raises a lazy salute. Inside, the station is its usual organised chaos. Horses whicker in their stalls, couriers argue about schedules, and a cook stirs something that might once have been lentils. You dismount, stretch your legs, and hand Fortuna Minor to a stable boy. Don't let her bully the others. You warn. The boy grins, missing a few teeth. She's already trying. You sigh. She always is. Inside the office, a weary stationarius, the station manager, leans over a wax tablet. Stylus tapping. He looks up as you approach. Name and route? Gaius of the Appian line. You reply automatically, presenting your credentials. He squints, nods, and flips through his records. You're early. The Capua messenger's still loading. You smile faintly. Then I'll enjoy the illusion of competence while it lasts. He chuckles, then gestures toward the fresh mounts tethered nearby. Take the bay, quick but moody, like my ex-wife. You take the reins, patting the horse's neck. The creature snorts and rolls one eye at you. We'll get along fine, you say softly. While you wait for the Capua messenger, you wander to the shade of the courtyard and sit beside a fountain. The water trickles softly, the kind of sound that makes you drowsy if you're not careful. You dip your hands in, splash your face, and feel the grime of the road dissolve, at least superficially. Nearby, two couriers argue about the fastest route to Beneventum. One insists on the northern pass, the other swears the southern is safer. Historians still argue about that too, centuries later, citing inscriptions and travel logs like lawyers in a cosmic court case. You smile, amused. The truth probably lies somewhere between convenience and luck. The Capua messenger finally arrives, sweating and scowling, a small cart rattling behind him. Stuck behind a senator's convoy, he mutters, tossing a sack of correspondence onto the table. They think the road belongs to them. You grin. Technically, it does. Technically, he echoes, glaring. So does the Emperor. Yet here we are. You help him unload the sack, sorting by seal and destination. A few scrolls destined for military outposts catch your eye. Urgent, likely dealing with troop movements in the south. The Empire is never at rest, even when its citizens are. When your name's called, you load up your new mount and check the next leg of your route. 60 more miles before dusk, 2 relay stops, 1 meal if you're lucky. You click your tongue and set off again, the station fading behind you in a swirl of dust and chatter. The second stretch is hillier. The road climbs gently, winding past terraced vineyards and sleepy villages. At each milestone, you read the carved numbers, worn smooth by centuries of wind and fingers. You touch one as you pass, a small superstition, a promise to the gods of travel. Historians still debate whether couriers truly believed in divine protection or if it was just habit. You prefer not to test either theory. Halfway up a ridge, your horse stumbles, nearly tossing you. You curse softly, steadying him, and glance down. A loose cobblestone, one of the many hazards that plague even Rome's finest engineers. You dismount, adjust the saddle, and take a moment to look back. The view stretches for miles. Fields, villas, smoke rising in lazy columns, and the thread of road you've already conquered. It's strangely humbling, realising you're just one of thousands riding these lines, each carrying words that shape the Empire's destiny, or at least decide whose taxes are overdue. By midday, the sun burns high, and you stop at a small roadside shrine. A stone Mercury stands with wings on his sandals, and a grin that looks suspiciously smug. Someone's left offerings. Bread, coins, even a bronze stylus. You add a sprig of thyme from your cloak, whispering, "Keep my path smooth and I'll bring better bread next time." The statue says nothing, as usual, but a cool breeze passes through the trees. You'll take it as a good sign. The road dips again, cutting through a narrow valley where fig trees lean over the stone edges, their leaves brushing your shoulders. The air cools. You hear the distant bleating of goats and the rhythmic splash of irrigation canals. You think of how this same road once carried legions, merchants, philosophers, all leaving footprints under the same sun. You, too, will leave yours, though they'll fade before the next rain. As the afternoon wanes, you spot the next relay, a squat outpost with smoke curling from its chimney. A wooden sign swings lazily above the gate, Mutatio Cordium. You dismount, stretch, and hand over your reins to a groom who looks barely 12. She bites. You warn? "So do I," he says with a grin, leading the horse away. Inside, you sign another wax tablet. Check your dispatch list and accept a bowl of something that claims to be stew. You take one bite and decide not to question it further. A fellow courier sits nearby, boots off, massaging his feet. "Long route?" he asks. You nod. "All routes are long when the stew tastes like this." He laughs, offering a sip from his flask. You accept. Cheap wine, sharp and earthy. It burns pleasantly. For a moment, the two of you sit in comfortable silence, watching the firelight flicker on the walls. Outside, the sky deepens to amber, and the air cools with the promise of evening. You know the routine. Eat, rest, sign, ride. The Empire's pulse beats on, steady as your own. And when you finally step back into the fading light, the road glows like polished bronze. You pull your cloak tighter, adjust your satchel, and whisper to the wind. "One more station before dark." The horse stamps, eager. You mount. The bells jingle, and together you vanish into the long golden hush of the Roman evening. The hills roll ahead like the folds of a sleeping giant, the air turning crisp as you climb into the Apennines. You tug your cloak tighter, and the wind immediately tries to steal it, cheeky as ever. The road narrows here, hugging the mountain's edge, stones slick with moss and mist. Messages through mountains, you mumble, as though the gods themselves commissioned the title of this particular misery. The horse snorts, unhappy with the incline. You can't blame him. The Via Latina winds upward in tight switchbacks, each turn revealing another dizzying drop into valleys far below. Every few hundred yards, a milestone rises from the earth, carved with Roman precision, promising you're making progress even if your thighs disagree. The empire prides itself on engineering, but mountains remain stubborn things, less obedient than roads, more poetic than you'd like. In the distance, the fog curls between pine trees like smoke from invisible fires. A raven caws from a rock, because of course it does. No journey through the Apennines would be complete without an ominous bird cameo. You shift in the saddle, your satchel pressing against your hip, heavy with messages too important to lose and too dull to read. Some are sealed with wax in imperial purple, urgent orders for frontier forts. Others are more mundane, tax accounts, requisitions, perhaps even a senator's polite complaint about his neighbour's peacock. You pause near a small stone bridge. Below, a stream chatters over the rocks, and the air smells faintly of wet pine and mineral earth. You dismount to let the horse drink, crouching by the water to wash your face. The cold bites pleasantly, waking you from the steady drone of hoofbeats. Across the ravine, you spot the faint outline of another courier riding the opposite ridge. A tiny figure swallowed by fog. You lift a hand in greeting. He doesn't see you, but it doesn't matter. The mountains carry your gesture like an echo anyway. Historians still argue whether couriers in this region rode alone or in pairs. Safety was always the question. Bandits were common. Wolves were hungrier than usual. And bureaucracy had yet to invent danger pay. You've ridden both ways and found that companionship mostly adds someone else to argue with when the weather turns. Speaking of weather, the clouds ahead are thickening, bruised and low. You sense what's coming. Mountain rain isn't polite, it doesn't knock before entering. The first drops strike your cloak with the stealth of spies. Then all at once, the storm arrives, sheets of water cascading down, turning the path into a river of mud and regrets. You curse softly, urging your horse onward. The road that looked so proud an hour ago now gleams treacherously, each stone eager to betray your footing. Lightning flashes somewhere above, lighting up the pine ridges. For a split second, you glimpse a watchtower silhouette against the storm. Roman masonry, defiant against the sky. You aim for it. The post stations in these regions double as refuges for travellers caught in bad weather. You just hope the stationarius hasn't decided to take the day off. You reach it as the rain peaks, dismounting into a puddle that immediately soaks your sandals. Excellent, you mutter. Warm feet are overrated anyway. You pound on the heavy wooden door, shouting your credentials. After a moment, it creaks open, revealing a guard with the kind of expression only years of boredom can produce. Courier for Capua Dispatch, you announce. He waves you in with a grunt. Inside, it's dim but dry. A fire crackles weakly in the hearth, surrounded by drying cloaks and steaming boots. A few travellers huddle there, a merchant polishing a bronze weight, a soldier with his helmet off and a faraway stare, and a monk scribbling notes on wax tablets. You nod politely to no one in particular and claim a spot near the wall. Steam rises from your cloak, mingling with the smell of wet wool and smoke, a scent so distinct you think it deserves its own Latin word. The stationarius appears from a back room, holding a tablet. Name? He asks, though his tone suggests he already regrets asking. Gaius of the Appian line, you reply, presenting your seal. He checks it, nods, and scribbles a note. We've had 2 couriers through today. One left for Beneventum this morning. In this weather? He said the Emperor doesn't wait for sunshine. You grin. I admire his optimism. You use the pause to dry your hands by the fire. The soldier glances up. Long route. You nod. All of them are. He chuckles softly. True enough. I rode for the legions once. The roads change you, make you quieter. You smile faintly, or just too tired to talk. A bowl of barley porridge appears, courtesy of the cook. It's thick, bland, and exactly what you need. You eat slowly, listening to the rain hammering the roof. It's strange how the storm outside seems to sync with your heartbeat, steady and rhythmic. The monk hums under his breath, something tuneless yet comforting. After a while, the thunder fades. You rise, stretch, and check your satchel. The wax seals are still intact, miraculously. You nod to the stationarius. I'll head out again before nightfall. He looks at you like you've just announced you plan to wrestle Jupiter himself. Suit yourself, he says. The next post's 15 miles downhill. If the rain hasn't washed it away. The descent is slower. Mist clings to the trees, thick enough to swallow sound. Every hoofstep echoes. You keep your eyes on the road, scanning for fallen branches or worse. Bandits often struck at travellers slowed by mud. You've been lucky so far. But luck, like dry sandals, never lasts forever. Halfway down, you hear something. Hooves, not your own, and too close. You tense, fingers brushing the small knife hidden under your cloak. From the fog emerges a figure on horseback, hunched and dripping. Another courier. Relief floods you. Evening, you call. The man raises his hand in greeting. Road's clear ahead, he says through the rain. His voice carries a strange echo, like the mountains are answering for him. Much obliged, you reply. You pass each other, two shadows exchanging words in the middle of nowhere. Later, you'll wonder if you imagined him. Some riders swear the Apennines are haunted by the ghosts of lost couriers, eternal messengers still trying to deliver their last dispatch. Historians, of course, roll their eyes. But as the fog thickens and the rain returns in thin, whispering sheets, you can't help glancing back, half expecting another silhouette to appear. None does. By dusk, you reach the next mutatio. The stable is warm, the straw dry, and the keeper friendly enough to offer a blanket. You sit by the fire, drying your cloak, and think about how the Empire's messages pass through places like this every day, through storms, over mountains, past whispers and legends. The ink may fade, the parchment may crumble, but the act of carrying them endures. You lie down on your cloak, close your eyes, and let the sound of the rain lull you. Tomorrow will bring clearer skies, or perhaps worse ones. Either way, the road will wait. It always does. You wake to the faint hiss of rain easing off the roof tiles and the unmistakable smell of wet straw. A good sign. You're alive. Which, for a Roman postman sleeping in the mountains, counts as a victory. The stable's half lit, a line of horses chewing hay in rhythmic, sleepy contentment. You roll to your side, stretch your back, and immediately regret it. Your body feels like a badly carved statue, cracked in all the wrong places. The mutatio keeper appears with a jug of water and a grin that says he's been up since before Jupiter invented mornings. You'll be heading down to the plains today, he says. Better roads, fewer ghosts. You raise an eyebrow. Fewer. He chuckles. Depends on how fast you ride. You can't tell if he's joking. The world outside is washed clean. Mist clings to the treetops, but the air tastes of pine and new beginnings, or at least slightly less mildew. You lead your horse into the yard, tighten the straps on your satchel, and breathe deep. The rains stop, the sky a dull pewter, perfect weather for trudging onward. By late morning, the road widens, trading mountain gloom for open fields. You pass farmers ploughing wet earth, their oxen plodding through puddles with patient resignation. One waves, another mutters something about taxes. No one's ever thrilled to see a courier. You're the physical embodiment of bureaucracy. Your stomach growls as the road bends toward a settlement. A cluster of buildings with tiled roofs and a faint trail of smoke curling upward. You smile at the familiar sight. The Mansio, or official inn. A place to eat. Maybe dry your cloak. Possibly regret your life choices. The mancio stands beside the road like an old friend who borrows money. Sturdy, reliable, and always slightly disappointing. A painted sign out front reads Manzio Caldina, lodgings, meals, repairs. You dismount, pat your horse's neck, and lead her toward the stable, where a bored boy accepts her reins. Feed her well, you say, pressing a coin into his palm. Better than you feed yourself. He grins. Then she'll eat fine. Sir, inside. The air is warm, thick with the smell of smoke, stewed lentils, and humanity. A low fire crackles in the corner. Travellers hunch over wooden tables, merchants, soldiers, a couple of weary-looking entertainers with a broken lute. The innkeeper, a broad woman with arms like marble columns, spots you instantly. Postman, she declares, wiping her hands on her apron. Soup's hot, wine's cheap, rooms are questionable. You grin. Just the way I like them. She ladles you a bowl of what she calls pulls, a kind of barley porridge with bits of mystery floating in it. You take a seat by the fire, setting your satchel within reach. The first spoonful burns your tongue, the second convinces you to keep living. You exhale and let your shoulders relax. A merchant at the next table leans over. Courier? Eh? Any news from Rome? You shrug. Only the usual. Someone's rich, someone's exiled, someone's pretending not to be both. He laughs, slapping the table. Same as ever. You nod. That's why it's called civilization. Historians still argue how much unofficial gossip the imperial post carried. The Cursus Publicus was for official business. Yes, but information is a slippery thing. A courier might hear rumours at every stop, and by the time a message reached its destination, half the empire's already heard the unofficial version. You smile into your soup. Maybe that's why Rome keeps running, because its gossip arrives faster than its armies. You take a sip of watered wine and glance around. The entertainers are tuning their lute, or trying to. The strings sound like they've been through 3 wars and a goat. The innkeeper yells at a cook to stir faster, and in the corner, a soldier sleeps sitting up, head bobbing to an invisible march. A dog pads over, ribs visible, tail wagging. You toss him a scrap of bread, and he flops down beside your chair like you've just promoted him to nobility. You and me both, you murmur, doing the empire's work for leftovers. The door swings open, letting in a blast of cold air, and a newcomer, a courier like you, soaked and grumpy. His name's Tullus, you've met before. He spots you, grins and stomps over. By the gods, you again. I thought you'd retired to some villa by now. And leave all this luxury behind, you joke, gesturing at your soup. He orders wine and flops into the seat across from you. I lost a wheel near Beneventum, he says. Had to walk 5 miles in the rain. Good exercise, you say. Exercise is for people with options. He mutters. You both laugh, the tired, understanding laugh of people who know the road too well. Any good news? You ask. He shrugs. A governor's cousin married a poet. There's talk of new taxes on olive oil. Oh, and someone stole a senator's pet flamingo. You blink. That last one sounds important. It's Rome, he says. Every flamingo's important to someone. The fire pops. You lean back, feeling the wine warm your chest. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine staying here a few days, sleeping past dawn, eating food that doesn't come in bowls of grey. But duty, like gravity, always pulls you back to the road. The innkeeper passes by and drops a folded note onto your table. Came through last night. Addressed to you, she says. Your eyebrows rise. For me. Few people write to couriers. You break the seal, an official wax mark from the Cursus Publicus headquarters in Rome. The message is brief. Inspection due at your next relay. Maintain standards. You laugh out loud. Standards. You repeat. If only they'd seen the stew. Tullus peers over. Trouble? Just bureaucracy reminding me I exist. He nods. That's almost flattering. You finish your meal, pay the innkeeper with a coin and a grateful nod, and step outside. The sky's clearing, faint blue pushing through the grey. You inhale deeply. The air smells of wet soil and wood smoke, cleaner than the city ever manages. Your horse nickers as you approach. You rub her neck, whispering, "Another day, another chance not to die." She flicks her ear like she's heard that joke before. You mount up, adjust your cloak, and turn back toward the road. The innkeeper waves from the doorway. "Safe travels, postman. Don't lose the Emperor's love letters." You grin. "If I find any, I'll send them back sealed." She laughs, and for a brief, shining moment, the world feels kind. As you ride away, the Mancio shrinks behind you, swallowed by dust and sun. The road stretches onward, always onward, toward more messages, more miles, more versions of yourself left behind at every stop. You glance over your shoulder one last time. Smoke curls into the sky, a thread of warmth rising from that small outpost of human chaos and comfort. You smile. Even the Empire, for all its grandeur, is built on little places like that. Inns that smell of stew, laughter echoing against stone, couriers drying their cloaks by the fire, and somewhere in the distance, the dog you fed barks once. A farewell, before returning to his nap. By the next morning, the rain has burned off, leaving a world that smells of dust, dew, and freshly mended promises. You're already on the road again, your horse steady beneath you. The leather of your satchel creaking softly with every trot. The letters inside rustle faintly, as though whispering secrets they'll never share. Somewhere among them are orders from governors, receipts from merchants, and maybe, if history is feeling generous, a few personal confessions meant for distant hearts. You've often wondered about the power of those sealed scrolls. Entire lives shift because of what you carry, yet you're the invisible thread between them, trusted, unseen, and mostly unpaid for your trouble. The secret code of seals and strings. You murmur, amused at how poetic bureaucracy can sound when you haven't slept properly in 2 nights. The Roman postal system takes secrecy seriously, or at least pretends to. Official letters are bound with cords of hemp or flax, tied in distinctive knots. Then comes the wax, melted over the tie, stamped with an emblem. The seal is everything. It tells who sent the message, where it's from, and whether it's been tampered with. Break the seal without permission, and you might as well break your career. Of course, rules exist mostly to be bent. Historians still argue whether couriers were ever authorised to open letters in emergencies. You laugh to yourself, imagining the Senate debating whether curiosity counts as an emergency. In truth, every courier you've ever met has peeked at least once, maybe not into an imperial order, but into some merchant's love poem or a recipe for exotic perfume. Human nature is harder to seal than wax. You pull one such letter from your satchel during a short rest at a fountain. It's not officially yours to read, but you can't help admiring the craftsmanship. Fine papyrus, elegant script, a scent of lavender clinging to the fibres. The seal depicts a dolphin leaping over waves, delicate and expensive, probably someone's symbol of devotion. You turn it over in your hands and sigh. May the gods bless you, whoever you are. You murmur, sliding it carefully back. And may your courier have better self-control than me. The fountain bubbles lazily beside the road. It's water fed by an aqueduct that hums faintly under the earth. Rome's genius wasn't just in conquering lands, it was in plumbing, paperwork, and postage. The same mind that built the Colosseum also figured out how to move water across mountains and messages across continents. You imagine the Emperor Augustus himself, years ago, declaring, "Let there be efficiency," and watching a dozen bureaucrats panic into existence. As you remount, a faint jingling catches your ear. Another courier approaches from the opposite direction, his satchel gleaming with fresh wax. You recognise him. Marcus, from the Southern Circuit. You raise a hand. Any news from the capital? He grins, slowing his horse. Plenty, none of it good. You laugh. Then it must be authentic. He pulls a letter from his bag and waves it teasingly. Inspection team's heading this way. Check your seals twice. You groan. Perfect timing. I just polished my least functional wax stamp. Marcus leans closer, voice dropping. Careful, though. There's talk some letters are being intercepted. Disappearances along the coastal route. You frown. Bandits? Or scribes with sticky fingers? Depends on who you ask. He rides off, leaving you with the uneasy thought that not all sealed messages reach their destinations. You glance at your satchel. How many stories have vanished in these mountains? Stolen or lost, rewritten by thieves or time? You tighten the strap. Not yours. Not today. The afternoon grows hot. Cicadas buzz like small gossiping deities, filling the silence with steady chatter. You stop at a milestone to rest your horse and check your supplies. Water low, bread gone. Patience dwindling. You take a sip from your flask anyway, grimacing at the taste, like warm vinegar with aspirations. You catch sight of a ruined watchtower nearby, its stones half swallowed by ivy. Once, it guarded travellers and messengers. Now it guards nothing but memories. You wander closer, curiosity tugging at you. Inside, the air is cool and still. Someone scratched graffiti into the wall. Mercurius custodi viatoris. Mercury, protect the travellers. You trace the words with your finger, feeling the grooves cut by some other tired courier centuries, or maybe just months, before you. Outside again, you pause to retie one of your sandal straps. The sun glints off the wax seals on your letters, turning them briefly into jewels. You think about the artistry behind each one. Imperial eagles, dolphins, lions, laurel wreaths. Tiny works of politics and pride. They say a seal reveals a man's character. You chuckle. So what does mine say? Chronic fatigue. A rustle in the brush makes you look up sharply. The road's deserted, but you sense movement. You rest your hand on the knife under your cloak. Another courier might call out. A bandit might not. After a long moment, a goat emerges, chewing lazily on a fig leaf. You exhale. By Jupiter, you almost earned a dagger. You villain. The goat bleats as if to apologise, or mock. It's hard to tell with goats. You remount and continue, heart still beating faster than the hooves beneath you. Every courier learns to read the road like language. A broken branch means company, distant dust means danger, and silence, deep, unnatural silence, means keep riding. Today, the road hums safely, but your mind lingers on Marcus's warning. Missing letters, forged seals, false messages. A single broken code could alter a governor's decision. Or worse, a war. By late afternoon, you reach another mutatio. The station keeper greets you with the usual half nod of recognition. He's young, perhaps too young, his hands stained with wax. Inspection tomorrow, he warns. They're checking seals and logs. I heard, you reply, handing him your credentials. Then you better make sure everything matches. He smiles nervously, clearly aware that half the system runs on improvisation. You spend an hour rechecking your letters, straightening cords, repressing wax where it's cracked. It's tedious work, but there's comfort in repetition. The rhythm of heat, pressure, and the faint scent of resin grounds you. You think of all the times these seals have crossed deserts, rivers, wars. They've survived worse than rain and tired couriers. Later, sitting by the fire with a cup of wine, you chat with the stable hands. One tells a story about a courier who carried a message for 10 years, never finding the recipient, wandering until the day he died. The others laugh. But you don't. You know how easily a message can outlive its purpose. When night falls, you lie on your cloak beneath the stars. The sky's so clear it almost feels fragile, like one careless breath could shatter it. The fire flickers low. Your satchel rests beside you, seals gleaming faintly in the dark. You close your eyes and think of all those unseen lives connected by string and wax, each letter a promise, a hope, or perhaps a lie. You whisper a short prayer to Mercury. Keep my seals unbroken, my sandals tied, and my luck above average. The fire crackles softly, answering in sparks. You smile. It's the best reply you'll get. Sleep creeps in, slow and gentle. Tomorrow, more roads, more messages, and maybe, just maybe, a little less rain. By the time dawn stretches her pale fingers over the hills, you're already on the move again. The sky glows with that fragile Roman gold, the kind that makes you believe the gods painted it, just for couriers who never sleep. Your horse, Fortuna Minor, flicks her ears as if to say, "We've done this too often." You pat her neck. "One more day. Old friend," you whisper, knowing full well it's a lie. The road is soft from the night's drizzle. Your sandals splashing in shallow puddles as you ride. Clouds still hang low, promising more mischief later. Today's task is straightforward in theory. Deliver a sealed dispatch from the governor's office in Capua to a commander stationed near Venafrum. In practice, it's a gauntlet of mud, deadlines, and unpredictable weather. Three forces that have defeated greater empires. Your satchel feels heavier than usual, though the letters inside haven't changed. It's the weight of responsibility, or possibly damp parchment. Either way, you ride on, ahead. The road cuts through low fields where farmers stoop in silence, shoulders glistening with dew. A few look up as you pass, nodding faintly. To them, you're not a hero or even a curiosity, just another piece of the imperial machine humming past. The first drops of rain hit just before noon. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just steady, patient, relentless. The kind of rain that tests character more than courage. Within minutes, your cloak clings to you like a cold second skin. You mutter to yourself, something about Jupiter needing a hobby that doesn't involve weather, rain, mud, and imperial deadlines. You grumble, it has a poetic ring. If misery counts as poetry, historians still argue whether couriers travelled during heavy storms or waited them out at the nearest mutatio. In your experience, that depends entirely on how frightening your supervisor is. The governor of Campania, for instance, expects his mail to arrive faster than lightning. The emperor doesn't stop for drizzle, he once declared, from inside a marble villa with a heated floor. You press onward. The rain thickens, turning the road into a grey mirror that reflects only your exhaustion. Each hoofstep splashes like an accusation. You pass an overloaded cart stuck in the mud, its driver shouting inventive Latin curses. You pause long enough to help him pry a wheel free with a branch. "You're a courier," he says, surprised. "You stop for peasants." You shrug. "If I don't, I'll have no one left to deliver to." He laughs, offers you a half-rotten apple as thanks, and waves you on. You take a bite anyway. Tastes like defeat with a hint of vinegar. Hours later, the road levels out, but the weather refuses to cooperate. Sheets of rain blur everything ahead. You pull your cloak tighter, lean forward, and urge Fortuna Minor to keep pace. She snorts in protest. "Yes, yes," you mutter. "I'd rather be in a tavern too." Eventually, you spot Salvation, a mutationist station on a small rise, smoke curling from its chimney. The sight nearly makes you weep. You dismount, boots squelching, and pound on the wooden door. It swings open to reveal a balding stationarius who looks like he's been scowling since birth. "Courier from Capua," you announce, shoving your credentials toward him. He peers at the seal, grunts and waves you inside. The warmth hits like a blessing. A fire crackles in the corner, and two other couriers sit nearby, steam rising from their cloaks. "Rain's turning the road into soup," one of them mutters. "Soup's thicker," the other replies. You hang your cloak near the fire, the steam making you smell like a sheep caught in a thunderstorm. The stationarius pours you a cup of watered wine, muttering, "No free stabling today. Hay prices up." You drop 2 coins into his palm without argument. Consider it a tax on my optimism. Sitting by the fire, you stretch your legs and watch the flames dance. The room smells of damp wool and faint mould, a comforting blend, if you've travelled long enough. You trade stories with the other couriers. One lost a letter to a thief disguised as a priest. Another swears he saw a senator's messenger drop his entire dispatch into a latrine. Historians still argue whether that counts as divine intervention. You joke. Laughter ripples through the room, warm as the fire. After a short rest, you saddle a fresh horse, a lean bay with more enthusiasm than sense, and head back into the rain. The storm's calmer now, more drizzle than deluge, but the mud clings stubbornly to your sandals. The air smells of wet earth and crushed pine, oddly soothing once you accept you'll never be dry again. You pass a patrol of soldiers trudging in the opposite direction, their armour slick with rain. One raises a hand in greeting. "Courier," he calls. "What news from Rome?" You shrug. "Mostly taxes. Sometimes poetry." He laughs. "About the same as war." Then, by late afternoon, the clouds finally break apart, and a weak sun filters through, transforming puddles into pools of gold. You pause by a milestone to let your horse drink from a roadside ditch. The carved inscription reads, "Emagripal cos turdivum," an old name, a reminder that even Roman stones live longer than Roman men. As you wipe your brow, you spot movement ahead, a cart overturned in the ditch, its driver pacing anxiously. You approach, calling out, "Need help?" The man turns, relief flooding his face. "Courier, thank the gods, my load's grain for the garrison ahead." You dismount, roll up your sleeves, and together you heave the cart upright. The driver bows low. "You've saved me a whipping." You smile. "Add it to my growing list of good deeds, ignored by history." The sun dips lower, painting everything in honey light. You ride the last miles with that peculiar mixture of fatigue and satisfaction that comes only after surviving something mildly ridiculous. When the commander's outpost finally comes into view, a square of stone walls and fluttering banners, you could almost cry. A sentry stops you at the gate. "State your purpose," he barks. "Mail for the commander," you reply, pulling your credentials from under your damp cloak. He squints, nods, and waves you through. Inside, soldiers train in the courtyard, their armour gleaming wetly. You hand over the sealed dispatch to a clerk who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Another one," he sighs, pressing the receipt tablet toward you. "The Empire runs on paper, doesn't it? And mud," you say. He smiles weakly. "Mostly mud." You sign your name, wipe the ink from your fingers, and step back outside. The rain has stopped entirely now. The air hums with cicadas, and the sky has turned the colour of ripe figs. For the first time all day, you feel warm. You lead Fortuna Minor to a patch of grass and sit beside her, chewing on the last of your stale bread. Around you, the world is quiet, washed clean, ready to start over. You close your eyes and listen. The crackle of distant fires, the murmur of voices, the faintest whisper of wind through olive leaves. Tomorrow, there will be more letters, more storms, more deadlines pretending to be divine commands. But tonight there's peace. You stroke your horse's mane and smile. "We made it, old girl." Against all logic. She flicks her tail as if to say, "Of course we did. You're late, but we did." And somewhere above, Mercury must be laughing softly, because for once, the road gives you silence instead of demands. The morning begins the way most Roman mornings do, without ceremony, with mild back pain, and with a faint desire to trade your job for a goat herder's. You roll up from your bed of straw, stretch, and feel every bone in your spine crack like old timber. The outpost around you stirs to life, soldiers calling to one another, blacksmiths hammering, the smell of burnt barley wafting from the kitchen. It's oddly comforting. You refill your flask at the well and glance at your satchel, lighter now that yesterday's delivery is complete, but the stationarius hands you another bundle before you can even think of resting. Fresh dispatches. Courier. he says, tone as apologetic as a tax collector. For Venusia, and one for Rome itself. You sigh, but take the stack. The Empire never sleeps. You murmur. No, he agrees. But you might, if you're lucky. The road stretches ahead once more, flat this time, running through vineyards and olive groves. You can smell crushed fruit in the air, sweet and slightly sour. The day's gentle, the light soft and forgiving. The kind of morning that makes you almost love your work. You pat your satchel affectionately. What you carry, and why it matters. You remind yourself. Every courier eventually realises that they're not just ferrying words. They're hauling the Empire's heartbeat, one letter at a time. Your first stop is a small villa rustica belonging to a minor magistrate. The message you carry bears an ornate seal, 2 eagles facing each other, wings outstretched. The steward greets you at the gate, hands soft and perfumed. Ah, the post, from Capua? You nod. He slips you a coin before you even open your mouth. The universal sign of, let's pretend this is faster service. You hand over the letter, take the bribe with professional indifference. And move along? Historians still argue how much private mail actually travelled through the Cursus Publicus. Officially, none. Unofficially, enough to keep you fed. Merchants, lovers, poets, they all piggybacked on imperial routes. Trusting couriers like you to deliver words that could ruin reputations or start new ones. You glance through the stack as you ride. Each letter is a world in miniature. One addressed to a grain official in Brundisium, another to a widow in Pompeii, her husband's seal pressed in faded red. A few carry personal touches, a sprig of lavender tied with string, a prayer etched onto the outer fold, a wax imprint shaped like a small fish, Christian symbols, whispered quietly. You wonder if they'll reach their destinations intact, or if, like too many before, they'll vanish into rain or bureaucracy. A farmer waves as you pass. Any word from the capital, he shouts. You raise your hand. Taxes are still real and senators still talk too much. He laughs, slapping his knee. So nothing's changed. Exactly, you call back, and both of you keep moving, him toward his field, you toward the next name on a list that never ends. The second letter is bound for a scholar living by the river Aufidus. His villa's quiet, shaded by cypress trees. You knock, and a slave opens the gate, leading you through a garden where scrolls are stacked on benches like sleeping snakes. The scholar himself greets you in a stained tunic, ink smudged on his hands. Ah, from Rome. From Capua, you correct him. But Rome's probably attached somehow. He chuckles. Isn't it always? He breaks the seal carefully, as though afraid the wax might take offence. It's from my patron, he says after skimming. He's asking for more poems about virtue. You smile politely. A popular subject. I hear. Yes, he sighs. But so few readers with any. He slips you a coin and a cup of watered wine. You sit for a moment in his garden, savouring the shade. Do you ever open them? He asks suddenly. The letters? You shake your head. No, I imagine what's inside instead. It's less disappointing. He laughs, the sound soft as parchment. Back on the road. The day grows warmer. You loosen your cloak and watch the horizon shimmer. To your right, a caravan of traders trundles along with wagons full of amphorae. One calls out, "Courier, what's the news?" You grin. Same as always, good for the rich, interesting for the poor. They laugh and someone tosses you a fig in appreciation. You catch it mid-air, bite into its sweetness, and nearly forget your exhaustion. Around midday, you stop by a roadside milestone, another of Rome's countless marble reminders that civilization can, in fact, count. The engraving reads, Venusia Saringen, 18 miles to go. You rest your back against it, stretching your legs. The road hums with heat. Cicadas drone lazily. A breeze stirs dust and olive scent together until the world feels suspended between sleep and motion. For a moment you think about what you really carry. Not ink and papyrus, but the illusion of connection. The empire depends on the idea that it can talk to itself, that Rome can whisper to her provinces and be heard. You're the whisper, not the speaker, not the listener, just the wind between. From a rider passes at full gallop, splashing mud across your sandals. Urgent dispatch, he yells, not even slowing. You grin. Aren't they all? By late afternoon, you arrive at the Venusia post house, a tidy cluster of buildings shaded by olive trees. The keeper greets you with a nod and a cup of water that's somehow colder than reason. You hand over 3 of your 5 letters, sign the manifest, and sit on a stone bench watching the sunlight fade. A young apprentice stamps the wax seals for the next batch, hands trembling slightly. Nervous? You ask. First week, he admits. I'm afraid of making mistakes. You smile. Good. That means you haven't made any big ones yet. He laughs, shoulders relaxing. You remember when you were that age, ambitious, clean, foolish enough to think the empire noticed individual couriers. Now you know better. Rome only notices silence. As long as the letters move. All is well. The keeper brings you a bowl of olives and barley cakes. On the house, he says. We appreciate riders who arrive before dark. You raise your cup. 2 timely arrivals, then. And fewer letters tomorrow, he adds. You both laugh, though you know that day will never come. When night settles, you lie on your cloak under the open sky, the smell of olive smoke drifting through the air. The stars look like scattered seals across a black parchment, each one holding a message you'll never read. You close your eyes, the weight of your satchel beside you, the hum of the empire's pulse steady in your ears. You think of the scholar, the farmer, the widow, all waiting for the sound of hoofbeats that mean life continues, that someone, somewhere, still remembers them. You smile into the darkness. We carry the world, you whisper. And even if no one ever says thank you, you know it's true. The next dawn feels different, lighter, warmer, and strangely quiet. You wake to the sound of doves cooing from the roof tiles above, and the faint hum of soldiers preparing for another day's drills nearby. For once, the sky looks clear, an unbroken sheet of pale blue stretching over the hills. You shake the dust from your cloak, splash your face with water from a nearby trough, and take inventory of your satchel. 2 letters left, one bound for a supply depot at the Empire's edge, and another for a merchant whose shop clings to the borderlands. The edge of Roman order has a peculiar scent, part iron, part smoke, and part rumour. As you ride out from the safety of the last major mutatio, the road begins to fray at its edges, the perfect paving stones giving way to uneven gravel. Civilization, you think, is measured by how smooth the road is beneath your sandals. Your horse snorts as if agreeing. You pat her neck. Don't worry, you say softly. We'll deliver and be back to hot stew before you can say, Imperial requisition. She tosses her head in disbelief. Encounters on the frontier, you whisper, letting the phrase settle in your mind. Every courier dreams of making it this far, though dream might not be the right word, perhaps endures. Out here, the Empire's grip loosens. Latin mixes with the languages of traders and tribes. The milestones become scarcer, the shrines smaller, the sense of distance larger than any map dares to admit. You pass through a stretch of scorched forest, the trees blackened from a recent lightning strike. The smell of char still hangs in the air. Ahead, a small patrol of Roman auxiliaries trudges along the same road. You catch up, and the officer in charge nods. Courier? Always, you reply. And you? Escorting grain shipments to the garrison. Bandits have been thick lately. Historians still argue whether bandit in Roman records always meant outlaws or sometimes just locals we haven't taxed yet. Either way, you nod sympathetically. I'll keep my eyes open. And your letters close, he says with a wry grin before leading his men onward. By midday, the hills flatten into a wide plain. The horizon ripples with heat and dust clings to your cloak. You stop at a roadside altar, a crude stone slab topped with offerings. Coins, a garland, a few figs already half eaten by birds. You add your usual token, a small pebble carved with a scratch that could almost be the mark of Mercury. Keep the road straight, you whisper. Or at least interesting. A few miles on, you reach a settlement that feels more outpost than town. Low stone walls, tents clustered by the ditch, and the smell of salted meat and wet leather. A sign carved into a weathered plank reads Castra Nova, Supply Depot. You dismount, hand your reins to a stable boy, and stretch your aching legs. Inside the gates, everything hums with practiced disorder. Soldiers haul crates, scribes argue over manifests, and somewhere, a cook swears loudly about missing grain sacks. You find the Praefectus Castrorum, the camp quartermaster, sitting behind a table stacked with scrolls. His armour gleams too cleanly for a man who's done much marching. Courier from Venusia, you announce, offering the sealed packet. He squints at it, turns it over and frowns. Late. You resist the urge to point out that mud, rain, and gravity exist. Instead, you say mildly, "The road was enthusiastic." He breaks the seal, scans the message, and grunts. "Orders to double rations for the northern patrols. That'll make the cooks cry." "I'm sure they'll sing you a song of gratitude," you say. He doesn't catch the sarcasm. "You'll wait for a reply," he adds. "Of course you will." You always wait. You sit near a fire pit while soldiers sharpen blades and argue about dice. The smell of roasted onions fills the air. One of them offers you a piece of bread. "You're the postman?" he asks. You nod. "The one who carries the Emperor's wisdom across the mud." "That's me," you say. "And occasionally, other people's grocery lists." He laughs, shaking his head. "Without you lot, we'd never know what the capital wants us to do wrong next." "Glad to serve," you reply dryly. An hour passes before the Praefectus reappears with a smaller letter, sealed in fresh red wax. "For the governor's office in Beneventum," he says. "And," he hesitates, "a second, unofficial message. Deliver to the merchant Cassius Denter at the border market." He presses a tiny purse into your palm. "Discretion, courier." You weigh it. Silver coins. Enough for a week of comfort, if you weren't you. You tuck both letters into your satchel, nod once, and mount up again. The road north veers through scrubland where the wind whistles like a flute. The landscape feels emptier here. No milestones. Few travellers. Only the endless hum of insects. By late afternoon and you reach the border market, a collection of tents and wooden stalls clinging to the edge of empire-like barnacles to a ship. Traders shout in Latin, Greek, Punic, and at least two dialects you don't recognise. The air smells of fish, leather, and ambition. You dismount, find the merchant Cassius Denter easily. His stall's the only one with polished amphorae and a bodyguard the size of a statue. He's plump, well-dressed, and already smiling. "Ah, a courier from the heart of civilization," he says, hands clasped as if greeting Jupiter himself. You hand over the letter wordlessly. He breaks the seal, reads, and laughs softly. "Good news, perhaps?" you ask. "Always," he says, slipping you another coin. "And if anyone asks, we never met her." You nod, pocket the coin, and leave before curiosity does something stupid. The world runs on secrets. Couriers simply deliver them. As the sun dips behind the hills, you ride a short way out of town, stopping by a ridge that overlooks the borderlands. Beyond the low stone markers, the world stretches wild and unclaimed, forests, rivers, shadows. You watch smoke rise from distant camps, hear faint drums, and feel the hum of everything just outside Rome's reach. Historians still argue how far the Cursus Publicus truly extended. Some say to the Rhine, others to the edges of Persia. But you know better. The road ends wherever someone stops believing in the idea of Rome. You sit there until the first stars appear, thinking about how far messages travel, and how little they change the world once they arrive. You wonder if the gods read over your shoulder when you ride, tracing the wax seals like constellations. Maybe Mercury does. He'd understand. The endless motion, the half-forgotten purpose, the thrill of distance. Finally, you turn back toward the outpost, the night breeze tugging at your cloak. "Come on, Fortuna Minor," you whisper. You've got more words to carry before sleep. The horse snorts, the stars glimmer, and the frontier hums, a heartbeat that never stops. As long as someone's still riding. You wake to a cold wind and the uneasy feeling that the world's turned a little sideways. The frontier, outpost behind you, is stirring. A chorus of shouts, creaking gates, the clang of pots, and yet, beneath the noise, there's a tension you can't name, the kind that travels faster than any letter. You rub your eyes, sip the last of your watered wine, and check your satchel. 2 scrolls, 2 seals, both intact. Still, something feels off. The sky's grey again, low and heavy like wet wool. You mount Fortuna Minor and start the slow ride toward the next station. The road's quieter than usual. No carts, no traders. Even the wind seems to hesitate. Accidents, rumours, and the lost dispatch. You mutter. The phrase feels too fitting for comfort. It starts small, just a thought. A prickle at the back of your mind. You tug open the flap of your satchel for reassurance and immediately freeze. 1 scroll is missing. Not misplaced, not fallen to the bottom, gone. For a moment, you just sit there, staring into the open bag, waiting for logic to rescue you. Maybe you dropped it at the border market. Maybe you left it by the fire. Maybe the gods have developed a sense of humour. You check again. No luck. The wax seal from the prefectus, the one meant for the governor's office, is gone. You slide off the horse, heart pounding. You search the road, the grass, the dust. Nothing. A courier's worst nightmare, right here on the edge of nowhere. Historians still argue about the punishment for losing imperial correspondence. Some say flogging. Others, exile. The optimistic claim you just got reassigned to a quieter post. You suspect optimism isn't part of the Cursus Publicus training. Think, you whisper. You remember the moment the prefectus handed you the letters. You tucked both into the inner pouch. Checked the strap twice. The merchant's letter you delivered. The silver's still in your pocket. That means the theft happened after. Which leaves only one explanation. Someone searched your bag while you slept. You curse softly. Mercury's sandals, you mutter. Why can't one day go by without drama? You urge Fortuna Minor forward, scanning the road for signs of tampering. The mud's churned from yesterday's travellers, but no clear footprints remain. Just the smell of rain and the soft squelch of hooves. You ride faster, hoping maybe, just maybe, the missing scroll slipped loose near camp. But deep down you know better. At the next mutatio, a squat building with smoke curling from its chimney, you dismount and march inside. The stationarius, a young man with ink-stained fingers, looks up from his tablet. Delivery? Problem, you reply, setting your satchel down. His eyebrows lift. Problem? You take a breath. A dispatch is missing. Imperial seal. Red wax from the garrison at Castronova. He pales a little. That's serious. I noticed. He rubs his chin. Thinking. We've had rumours. Bandits near the southern ridge. Targeting couriers and supply carts. They don't take coin. Just messages. You frown. What would they want with messages? He shrugs. Maybe they can't afford good gossip. You can't help a small smile despite yourself. Any idea where they strike? Between here and the next crossing, the road narrows near the old quarry. Perfect place for an ambush. You thank him, refill your flask and step back outside. The rain begins again, light but insistent. You pull up your hood, mount your horse and whisper. If we find whoever took that letter, remind me to thank them personally, with my boots. The road winds through the quarry just as described. Sheer cliffs on both sides, a ribbon of mud at the bottom. The kind of place where the Empire's confidence feels far away. You keep your hand near the knife at your belt. Then you see it. A scrap of parchment, half buried in the mud. Your heart jumps. You slide from the saddle, kneel and pick it up. It's not your missing dispatch, but it's something. Part of a broken seal. The wax smudged but still faintly marked with an eagle's wing. Your missing seal. You look around. The cliffs echo with dripping water, and somewhere above, a crow calls. You tuck the fragment into your pouch and climb back into the saddle. Uneasy. Whoever took the scroll didn't drop it far. The road ahead splits into two paths, one smooth and open, the other veering through a thicket of olive and pine. You choose the latter. It's slower, but cover feels safer than visibility right now. As you ride, the silence deepens until it feels like the world's holding its breath. And then, just as you round a bend, you spot movement. A figure crouched beside the road, back turned, rummaging through something. You freeze. The horse huffs softly, ears flicking. You slide off and approach quietly, hand tight on your knife. It's a boy, maybe 15, dressed in rags. His hands are black with dirt, and in them, the broken scroll tube of your dispatch. You exhale. Stop. He jumps, spinning, eyes wide. I found it, he blurts. It was lying near the stones. You study him. Thin, scared, not a trained thief. You opened it? No, I swear by all the gods. You take the tube gently. The seal's cracked. The scroll inside damp but legible. Relief floods you, followed quickly by resignation. You shouldn't touch things that aren't yours. You say softly. He nods, trembling. I'm sorry. I thought maybe it was food. You look at him properly now, barefoot, ribs visible under the dirt. He's no spy, just another casualty of empire, scraping what he can from its leftovers. You sigh, pull a crust of bread from your satchel, and toss it to him. Next time, check the bags marked grain, not government. He hesitates, then takes it, devouring it like he hasn't eaten in days. Thank you, he mumbles through crumbs. Don't thank me. You say, just don't read Latin until you're older. He grins, the brief flash of a child not yet hardened by hunger. You rewrap the scroll, reseal it as best you can, and turn back toward the road. Behind you, the boy disappears into the trees. You know you'll probably never see him again. But for some reason, the world feels a little heavier now. By the time you reach the next relay, you've already prepared your story. Damaged seal due to rain and road debris. The clerk nods, uninterested, stamping your tablet with the standard mark. Bureaucracy has no time for drama. That night, you lie awake on your cloak, listening to the fire crackle. The sound of dripping water outside blends with the soft shuffle of horses in the stable. You pull the recovered scroll from your bag, staring at its patched wax. You did your duty. You salvaged what was lost, but still, unease lingers. Maybe because it wasn't just the seal that broke today. Maybe it's faith. Faith in a system that sends words across the world yet never hears them. You turn on your side, eyes half closed, whispering into the dark. If anyone's listening, Mercury, Emperor, or otherwise, please, let tomorrow be dull. The wind shifts, whistling through the shutters. You'll take that as a yes. The next morning dawns thick and gold, with a kind of light that makes everything look gentler than it really is. You lie there for a long moment, not quite ready to move, your head resting on the folded edge of your cloak. Somewhere beyond the wall, a rooster tries to sound impressive, and fails. A mule brays like it's mocking him. It's oddly comforting, the sound of creatures just as tired of mornings as you are. You sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes. The fire in the hearth has burned low, leaving only a faint orange glow under the ash. You stretch, wince, and check your satchel out of habit. All letters accounted for. Seals unbroken. No surprise disappearances. Progress. Today, you're turning back toward the capital. Back toward the capital, you murmur, as if naming the chapter helps your bones cooperate. You can almost hear the old stationarius laughing at you from the last post. You'll miss the road once you're off it. Maybe. But you'd still prefer a week where your only obstacle is an overcooked loaf of bread. You step outside into the pale morning. Mist curls across the fields, wrapping the world in soft edges. The air smells faintly of wet grass and wood smoke. You mount Fortuna Minor, who flicks her tail as if to say, "About time." The path ahead glows faintly in the dawn. Every puddle turned to a mirror. The first miles pass in a kind of waking dream. The countryside blurs, vineyards, olive trees, cottages with smoke rising from clay chimneys. Farmers already at work wave absently as you pass, their ploughs cutting furrows into damp earth. You wave back, though most don't look up. To them, you're just another ghost on the road, passing through with other people's business. You find yourself thinking about that boy from yesterday, the one with the stolen letter and the hollow eyes. You wonder where he's sleeping now, whether he's eaten something more than bread crusts. Historians still argue whether couriers ever kept personal logs of their journeys. You never have, but sometimes you wish you did. Not for the letters, but for the faces. The nameless ones who remind you that Rome isn't marble and law. It's breath and hunger and dust. Around midday, you stop by a small stream to water your horse. The sun has climbed, turning the mist into glitter. You kneel to wash your hands, watching ripples distort your reflection. You look like a man who's been dragged across the empire by mules. You tell yourself. The reflection doesn't disagree. A farmer's cart passes on the opposite bank, loaded with amphorae of oil. The driver calls out cheerfully. News from the capital? You shrug. Probably the same as always. Everyone's arguing and nobody's happy. He laughs. Good. Means Rome's still Rome. You climb back into the saddle. And the rhythm returns. Hoof beats, creaking leather, the soft hiss of wind through cypress. The road rises gradually toward a ridge. From up here, you can see miles of the empire stretched out before you, shimmering under the sun, tiled roofs, winding rivers, even the faint glint of distant roads. It's beautiful in a way that feels accidental, and yet, as much as you love this view, something in you has shifted, for the first time. The endless horizon doesn't thrill you, it just feels tired. You realise you've spent years tracing the same veins of stone, carrying the same words for people who will never know your name. The road has become both your freedom and your prison. You shake off the thought. Melancholy's for poets, you mutter. And poets don't have to clean their horses. At the next mutatio, you stop to trade mounts. The stable smells of hay and ambition. A young groom greets you with a grin that's far too energetic for this hour. Courier from the south, right? You're making good time. You raise an eyebrow. Define good. You're not dead. Then excellent time. You reply. You hand over your credentials and take a seat while he saddles a fresh horse. Another courier sits beside you, a woman this time, with a scar across her cheek and the kind of calm that comes from surviving everything twice. Heading to Rome? She asks. You nod. Eventually. They say it's getting crowded again. She says, new taxes, new statues, same old smell. You grin. Ah, home. She laughs softly, then grows thoughtful. Funny, isn't it? We move faster than anyone in the empire, and yet we never arrive anywhere that feels ours. You glance at her, surprised. You ever write that down? I'd need time to stop first, she says. Then she mounts her horse and disappears down the western road, leaving her words behind like a breadcrumb trail. By late afternoon, the road winds through rolling hills dotted with villas. The air smells of crushed herbs and distant rain. You pass a group of children chasing each other with sticks, shouting in mock Latin, "I am the emperor." No, I am. You smile as you ride by. Childhood rebellion never changes. Near sunset, you stop at a small shrine built into the hillside. A stone altar to Mercury, half cracked and overgrown with ivy. The face of the god has worn smooth, but his wings are still visible. Someone's left offerings, a coin, a sprig of rosemary, and a tiny clay sandal. You add your own coin, murmuring, "You've kept me upright this far." I suppose that counts as devotion. The air cools quickly. You decide to camp by the shrine, tying your horse nearby. You light a small fire, boil a bit of barley in your tin cup, and watch the sky fade from orange to purple. The first stars prick through like cautious ideas. As you eat, you take out your remaining scrolls, checking their seals again. Still intact. The wax catches the firelight, glowing faintly red. You think of all the letters you've carried over the years. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. And how few of them you ever truly understood. Orders, petitions, love notes, threats, blessings. Words that cross mountains and seas because someone thought they mattered. And yet, what about your own words? You've never written any. Not even a letter home. You realise you're not sure where home is anymore. The fire crackles. The road hums faintly in the distance. And somewhere in the dark, an owl calls. You lean back against your saddle, feeling the day slip away. The stars wheel slowly overhead. And for the first time in a long while, you let your thoughts drift without chasing them. Maybe one day you'll stop riding. Maybe you'll open a tavern by the road. Serve stew to other couriers. Tell them you once knew every milestone by heart. Or maybe you'll keep riding until the roads themselves forget your name. For now, though, you lie there beside the shrine. Your satchel safe, the sky enormous, and the night as still as a sealed letter. Morning arrives with a rooster's scream, and the familiar ache of joints that have known too many roads. You sit up, stretch, and watch the first sunlight spill over the hills like warm honey. It's a new day, which in courier terms means the same as every other. A mix of ink, deadlines, and creative accounting. You sigh. Payday and paperwork? You mutter. The words sound optimistic, almost mythical, like dragon gold or honest senators. You've been riding for nearly 3 weeks now, and your pay should finally be waiting for you in Beneventum. The thought almost makes your legs hurt less. You brush the dew from your cloak, pat Fortuna Minor on the neck, and set off once again. The city greets you by midday, rising from the plain like a mosaic of rooftops and market chatter. You smell bread baking, hear the calls of vendors hawking oil and figs, and feel the pulse of civilization vibrating through the cobbles. After days of rain, mud, and solitary inns, it's almost overwhelming. You make your way through the crowded streets to the Cursus Publicus office, an unassuming stone building squeezed between a bathhouse and a tavern. The door creaks as you push it open. Inside, the air smells of ink, wax, and despair. Behind a counter sits an accountant with the haunted look of a man who's stared at too many tablets. He barely glances up. Name and rote? Gaius? Appian circuit? You reply? He flips through a stack of wax tablets, each covered in cramped, angry script. Payment last recorded 2 weeks ago. Still awaiting confirmation from Rome. You blink. Awaiting confirmation. I've been confirming it with my existence for the past fortnight. He shrugs. A masterpiece of bureaucratic indifference. Delays in record transmission. There's a new policy about courier pay. Something about cutting excess expenses. I am the excess expense, you say flatly. And yet, he replies, you're still here. You bite back a laugh. Fine, can I at least see the supervisor? Second door on the right. He sighs. If he's awake, the supervisor, thankfully, is not asleep, just buried in parchment. He's a round man with ink-stained fingers and the posture of someone who's never touched a horse. Courier Gaius, he says when you enter, recognising your seal. The stationarius sent word of your efficient delivery from Castronova. You blink. Efficient. I lost a scroll, fought a thunderstorm and bribed a mule. And still arrived on time, he says cheerfully. That's what matters. He pulls out a small pouch of coins and drops it onto the desk with a satisfying jingle. 1 month's pay. You open it, count quickly, and raise an eyebrow. You seem to have misplaced 3 denarii. He smiles innocently. Administrative fee. For what? Administrating, you sigh. Pocket the coins. and remind yourself that strangling civil servants is still technically frowned upon. Before you go, he adds, you'll need to sign the log. He gestures to a wax tablet filled with names and notes. You press your stylus into the wax beside your own record. The motion so practiced, it's almost meditative. A courier's true legacy isn't the letters they carry, it's the signatures they leave behind. Proof that they existed between one message and the next. Outside, the street hums with life. You buy a loaf of bread from a vendor who insists it's fresh, though it sounds hollow when you tap it. You don't care. Warm bread is still better than cold bureaucracy. You wander toward the tavern next door, the Red Cockerel, according to its faded sign, and claim a seat in the corner. The tavern's half full, merchants tallying accounts, 2 soldiers arguing about dice, a woman tuning a lyre. You order watered wine and bread dipped in oil, then pull your satchel close. For once, it's empty. No dispatches, no urgent seals, no invisible weight pressing against your hip. The absence feels luxurious. The barkeep, a wiry man with a voice like gravel, pours your drink. You're one of the post riders, eh? He says. You nod. And what's it like, carrying the Emperor's thoughts across the Empire? You grin. Mostly it's carrying everyone else's complaints about him. He laughs. A noble profession. Then, infinitely noble. You reply, seldom appreciated. A young courier at the next table overhears and leans over. His cloak still too clean. His eyes still too hopeful. Is it true, he asks, that couriers get bonuses for long routes? You nearly choke on your wine. Bonuses? Yes, extra coin for difficult terrain. You laugh so hard the barkeep turns to look. Oh, my friend. The only extra thing you get is blisters. He frowns. But the recruiters said... They also said the sandals were comfortable, didn't they? His silence answers for him. Welcome to the road. You say gently, historians still debate whether imperial couriers were respected civil servants or glorified delivery men. Sitting there, half drunk and half starved, you suspect the truth is somewhere in between. You're part of the machine that keeps Rome breathing. But the machine rarely says thank you. You finish your meal and step back into the sunlight. The marketplace hums around you, blacksmiths hammering, children shouting, the sweet chaos of a city that pretends it never sleeps. You find yourself smiling despite it all. Pay may be short, respect non-existent, but the rhythm, the pulse of life along these roads, feels almost sacred. You wander toward the Forum, where a marble statue of Mercury watches over the crowd. Someone's draped flowers around his feet, offerings from traders and travellers. You pause, drop a single coin beside them. For good accounting, you whisper. Then you notice a clerk striding toward you, tablet in hand. Courier Gaius, he calls. You groan inwardly. Yes. Urgent dispatch for Rome. You're reassigned immediately. Of course you are. You glance at the sky, the road, your horse waiting patiently nearby. No rest for the reliable, you mutter. He hands you a sealed packet. The wax still warm. The mark of the Senate itself. You sigh, tuck it into your satchel, and swing into the saddle. The coins in your pocket jingle softly, a hollow sort of applause. Well, fortuna minor sibi. You say, it seems we've been paid just in time to start over. She snorts, as if she saw it coming. You grin. Fine, one more road. And as you ride out of Beneventum, the sun high and the wind tugging at your cloak, you realise that the Empire will never stop needing letters, or fools to carry them. By the time you reach Ostia, the air has changed completely. It's thicker, saltier, full of the humming life of ships and gulls and trade winds. The Empire's lungs, breathing in spice and silk, exhaling orders and taxes. You can smell everything. Tar, olives, fish, sun-warmed rope. And underneath it all, that endless ocean scent, a mix of life and decay that somehow feels honest. You haven't seen the sea in months, and the sight of it almost stops you. The road spills directly into the harbour district, where 1,000 sounds blend into one vast conversation. Sailors shouting, merchants bargaining, dockhands singing rude songs about their captains. You lead Fortuna Minor through the chaos, smiling despite yourself. You can feel the city's pulse in your bones. "Off duty in Ostia," you whisper. It sounds like a dream, or maybe an apology. You're supposed to hand over your latest dispatch to a Senate courier heading inland. But for once, you take your time. You stop by the fountain at the Forum, splashing your face with cold water. The marble statue above you depicts Neptune, beard magnificent, trident raised in theatrical authority. You salute him with a tired grin. "Don't drown anyone important today," you mutter. The courier office near the docks is a modest building with a mosaic of Mercury on its floor, winged feet poised as if about to leap toward the horizon. The clerk behind the counter recognises you instantly. "Gaius, you're back again?" "Against my better judgment," you reply, setting your satchel on the desk. He chuckles, signing the receipt. "The capital thanks you." "The capital owes me," you correct. He waves a hand. "We're all owed by someone." You step outside again, free for the first time in weeks. No deadlines, no seals, no supervisors breathing down your neck. Just the hum of the sea and the rare luxury of idleness. The docks are a world unto themselves. Sailors mend nets, merchants argue over ledgers, and street children chase each other between amphorae taller than you. A fishmonger offers you grilled sardines for a single coin. You buy two because it feels like celebration. The fish crackles on the little clay grill, the smell sharp and good. You eat slowly, savouring the salt and the grease and the fact that, for once, no one expects you to move. As you sit on a low wall, you watch a cargo ship preparing to depart. Slaves haul ropes. The captain shouts orders. Gulls wheel overhead. On the deck, a man reads aloud from a scroll, shipping manifests probably. But from a distance, it almost sounds like poetry. You wonder how many letters will sail with that ship. Contracts, promises, warnings, confessions. You've carried thousands across land. These will cross the glittering uncertainty of the sea. A familiar voice interrupts your reverie. "Courier Gaius, still alive!" You turn to see Lucius, an old road companion, and grinning through his beard. His cloak is sun-bleached, his sandals worn worse than yours. "Barely," you reply. "I thought you were posted to the northern routes." "Was," he says, sitting beside you. "Traded rain for salt. The gods reward me with mildew instead." You laugh, clinking your fish skewer against his cup. "How's the work here?" "Easier on the legs, harder on the liver," he says. "Less mud, more wine, fewer wolves, more sailors." Sounds like civilization. He takes a sip, eyes distant. "You ever think about stopping?" You shrug. "Every morning. But the road's like a bad friend. You keep going back because it knows all your stories." He nods slowly. "There's talk of privatising part of the Cursus Publicus," he says, "letting merchants manage deliveries for profit." You snort. "Rome's answer to everything. Sell it." "Historians will argue about it for centuries," he says with a grin, "and they'll all be late with their reports." You both sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the harbour sway with life. Children laugh as they chase a stray chicken through the crowd. A woman balances a basket of dates on her head, moving like a dancer. Somewhere, a musician plucks a lyre, the notes drifting like sunlight across water. The longer you sit, the more your body begins to soften into stillness. It's an unfamiliar feeling, one you half distrust. You realise how long it's been since you stayed anywhere, long enough to recognise the rhythm of the place. The road doesn't let you settle. It teaches you to belong everywhere and nowhere at once. You wander with Lucius through the market stalls, each one a small universe. A merchant from Egypt shows you blue glass beads that catch the light like trapped sky. A woman from Hispania sells perfume in tiny clay jars, its scent of almonds and myrrh hanging heavy in the air. You linger at her stall longer than you should, inhaling deeply. Smells like not working. You say. She laughs. That'll cost extra. By late afternoon, the heat eases. The sea turns silver, the air humming with voices and gulls. Lucius claps you on the shoulder. Come, there's a tavern near the breakwater. We'll drink to our blisters. You follow him down the narrow alleys toward the sound of laughter. The tavern, like all coastal taverns, smells of wine, sweat, and arguments. You find a corner table with a view of the water. Someone's singing, badly, and the crowd joins in with the gusto of the deeply unconcerned. You laugh until your ribs ache. The owner, a plump woman with hair like spilled ink, brings 2 cups of red wine and a bowl of olives. First round's for Mercury, she says. You raise your cup. And the second for everyone who hasn't lost a letter this month. The sun sinks, staining the sky orange and pink. The harbour lights flicker on, oil lamps strung along piers like grounded stars. You feel something soft unwind inside you, a calm that's been waiting years to arrive. When you finally step outside again, the night air is warm and filled with music. You walk along the docks alone, listening to the creak of ships and the hush of waves against stone. You can almost hear the Empire breathing through the rhythm of tide and timber. You sit on a bollard, watching moonlight shimmer on the water. For the first time in months, you think about your life not as a road, but as a series of pauses between destinations. Little fragments of rest, laughter, shared bread, half-heard songs. The letters might belong to others, but the moments, they've all been yours. Fortuna Minor snorts softly from where she's tethered, tail flicking. You smile. Don't worry, old girl. You whisper. We're not done yet, but for tonight, let's just breathe. The sea answers with a slow sigh, the kind only waves can make, something between sleep and memory. You close your eyes and let it wash over you, the sound as steady as hoofbeats fading into the distance. You wake to gulls and the low groan of ships shifting in their moorings. The morning air is soft, salty, full of voices calling out numbers, directions, farewells. The sea beyond the harbour glitters like beaten silver under the early light. You breathe deeply and stretch your sore limbs, feeling every mile of road you've ever ridden hiding somewhere in your bones. The coin from last night still sits in your pocket, a reminder that even rest costs something. You run a thumb over it, smiling faintly. A life carried by roads, you whisper, and fueled by barley bread. Fortuna Minor flicks her ear, as if to agree, though she's more interested in breakfast than philosophy. You take your time preparing to leave. There's no urgent order today. No senator pacing his villa waiting for a reply. No general tapping his stylus impatiently. You could almost convince yourself you're free. The thought feels strange, unfamiliar, like a door you're not sure you want to open. You wander the pier one last time, watching merchants haggle and sailors coil ropes with the solemnity of priests. Everything moves with purpose. Even the gulls seem busy. The sea breeze tugs at your cloak, and you realise you're standing still, in a world that refuses to. Historians still argue whether couriers ever retired or simply vanished into the roads they served. You suspect the truth is less poetic. They just stopped one day, sat down under a tree, and let the next rider take their place. You imagine the Empire never noticed. The letters still arrived, the seal still broke, and the world kept spinning. You step into a small bakery by the docks, drawn by the smell of fresh bread and honey. The baker, a woman with forearms like marble columns, greets you warmly. Courier? Yes, I've seen you ride through before. You nod. Several times. Your bread's been the only constant in this empire. She laughs. Then I must be more reliable than your governors. You grin. Far better paid, I hope. Barely, she says, sliding a small loaf toward you. On the house. You take it, break off a piece and eat slowly as you walk toward the outskirts. The taste is simple, perfect, soft crumb, warm crust, a hint of sweetness. You close your eyes and let the flavour anchor you. The way only something ordinary can, the road out of Ostia gleams faintly in the sunlight. Beyond it lies Rome, sprawling, and eternal, always calling its servants back. You mount Fortuna Minor, who snorts as if to say, finally. The first steps onto the stone sound familiar, rhythmic, inevitable. The city grows smaller behind you, swallowed by olive groves and the shimmer of heat. Your shadow stretches long before you, one figure carrying the weight of countless forgotten messages. You ride without hurry. For once, you're not racing against the sun. As the day warms, your thoughts drift. You think of the roads, Appian, Flaminian, Latin, the great veins of empire. You've crossed them all, worn through sandals, horses, even hope. And yet the sight of a straight Roman road still stirs something in you. Pride, maybe, or habit. Hard to tell the difference anymore. You remember your first dispatch. Years ago, a sealed message to a provincial tax collector. You were nervous, eager, proud to wear the bronze tag of the Cursus Publicus. You thought every letter mattered. You still do. Though now you know most end up gathering dust in archives no one will ever read. Still, there's comfort in the act itself. Carrying, delivering, connecting. A rhythm, older than empires. You pass a milestone half buried in grass. The inscription's worn, the Latin barely legible. You brush your hand over the grooves, tracing the shape of the letters. As long as the roads remain, you whisper, so do we. The afternoon drifts by in slow motion. You stop once to rest, sitting under a cypress tree. The air hums with cicadas. You take out your writing stylus, old, bent, a gift from a scholar long forgotten, and scratch a few words into your wax tablet. I have seen the empire breathe through couriers. We are its heartbeat, soft but constant. Then you smooth the wax clean again. Words are meant for others. After all, by the time the sky blushes with sunset, you're back on the outskirts of Rome. You can see the city's domes glinting like mirrors in the dying light. Smoke curls upward from 100 hearths, blending with the fading blue. The air smells of baked clay, oil, and promise. You pause at the crest of the hill. From here, the roads branch out in every direction. North to the mountains, south to the sea, east to the deserts, west to the unknown. You've ridden them all, or close enough. Each one feels like a line from a letter the gods never finished writing. You dismount, letting Fortuna Minor graze by the roadside. The wind stirs your cloak, lifting dust from the stones. You think about the countless couriers who've stood here before you, looking at the same view, thinking the same thoughts. The empire endures because of them, because of you, because someone always keeps the road alive. You smile. We're all messengers, you murmur to the wind, even when there's nothing left to say. Then you turn toward the city, the glow of torches flickering ahead. The road hums beneath your sandals, ancient and patient, as if welcoming you home. You walk slowly, savouring the sound, the rhythm of centuries beneath your feet. The wind shifts again, carrying with it the faint smell of sea salt. You think of Ostia, the tavern, the laughter, the music. You think of the mountains, the storms, the stolen scroll. And somehow, all of it fits together. The chaos, the beauty, the exhaustion, the joy. By the time you reach the gates, the stars have begun to bloom overhead. You pause, hand resting on Fortuna Minor's mane. We've done enough, haven't we? She flicks her tail in what could only mean yes, and so you stand there, in the soft night air, listening to the city breathe, the same way the empire has always breathed, through dust and ink and footsteps fading down a road that never ends. The fireflies rise among the cypress trees, their light slow and soothing. The city walls glow faintly in the moonlight. Your heart slows. The world softens. You lean against your horse, close your eyes, and let your breath fall into rhythm with the distant hoofbeats of memory. The road is quiet now. The letters all delivered. The night warm and endless. The empire hums far away. But here there is peace. Sleep comes easily this time. You dream of open roads, of laughter in taverns, of seals unbroken and messages still waiting to be read. And as the stars drift above the silent stones, you let go of the road, knowing it will remember you long after you're gone. The story quiets, like the end of a long ride when even the wind forgets your name. You breathe slowly, eyes half closed, feeling the day dissolve into silver calm. The road that once stretched endless beneath you now feels soft, distant, a ribbon of memory fading into mist. You imagine the hoofbeats slowing, fading into the rhythm of your own heartbeat. The letters are all delivered. The empire is asleep. You can hear the sea again, that low, eternal whisper, like the whole world exhaling at once. The stars shimmer above you, steady, unhurried, patient. You picture your horse resting nearby, the faint clink of her harness in the dark, the smell of warm leather and grass. Everything in the world feels smaller now, gentler. The dust of the road settles around you, soft as a blanket. You think about all the places you've been, the people you've met, the words you've carried across mountains and rain. They blur together into a single thought. That movement itself was always the meaning. That every letter, no matter how trivial, was a promise of connection, one person reaching toward another. Your breath slows, the night deepens, the road, the stars, the whisper of waves, they all blend into one long sigh, the kind that erases edges and invites dreams. And in that hush, you realise the journey was never about the destinations at all. It was about the quiet moments between them, the pauses, the laughter, the flicker of firelight against stone. The road will keep going, as it always has. But for now, you can rest. You're home, wherever you are.